This portion of the John Fredericks Show is brought to you by Hargrave Military Academy. Attend an educational and informative open house event at Hargrave Military Academy in Chatham, Virginia. For more information, visit online at hargrave.edu. Hargrave Military Academy. Build his future.
Joining us now is Chris LaCivata. He's a senior strategist with Team Cuccinelli. How are you, Chris?
I'm well, sir. Thanks for having me.
Chris, I just want to introduce you quickly to my audience here in Virginia. You've been around the block, so to speak, in a good way. You've been part of the Robert Hurt campaign in the 5th District. You were part of Scott Ridgell's successful win in 2010. You've been involved with George Allen. How did you hook up with the Attorney General?
Actually, back in 2009, at the start of his... just as he made the decision that he was going to run for Attorney General, he and I sat down together, and I've been doing politics in the Commonwealth for about 22 years. It was the closest fit for me. Right out, I spent some time in the Marine Corps and got out of the Marine Corps and went straight into this. So it was a relatively easy transition. And working with Ken in 2009 in the Attorney General's race, had a contested convention and. So here we are, 4 years later.
All right. The big debate on Saturday, PBS, it's kind of some mixed reviews. Obviously, you've got a biased view, but biased or not, how do you think it went down?
Well, debates are important because they give an audience, and obviously we're playing to a larger audience, an opportunity to see the two candidates under fire against one another, obviously. So we are hoping that we get to have a debate in Hampton Roads and in the Peninsula, so people can see that firsthand. Right now, we only have two debates scheduled. The one we just had, and the one in Fairfax at the Chamber of Commerce. I know that Terry McAuliffe, Ken's opponent, has denied a debate in Hampton Roads. We're trying to reestablish one, so we hope the folks there get to see one up close and personal. Saturday's debate, we thought, went extremely well from the standpoint of Ken being able to communicate, a two-principled prong of attack against Terry, one being, at least from Ken's perspective, his plan, which is really focused on jobs, the economy, dealing with sequester, how do we keep and retain jobs in the Commonwealth, tax cut for the middle class. His focus really, a laser-like focus on the middle class, how to expand it. So vis-a-vis the Terry McAuliffe campaign, which is really about a person of one, Terry McAuliffe. If you look at Terry's long history in politics, it's really built around the premise of what can I do for me. So, contrasting that record with Ken's long record, people of Virginia are given a very, very stark contrast in which to choose from.
Right. It seemed like from this opening salvo, if you will, that pretty much the die is cast. That it seemed to me, and I want to get your view on this, Chris, it seemed to me like McAuliffe, that Mr. McAuliffe is trying to rerun the 2012 campaign in Virginia. Obviously, the Democrats carried the state on for both Tim Kaine and President Obama. He was hammering on all those typical themes. You could have taken any of Obama's speeches in Virginia in 2012 and just changed the names. I mean, it all seemed to be the same. How do you think that's going to play?
It's a very good point, John, and it's a rerun of 12. It's also a rerun of 9, of the 2009 campaign, and to a certain extent, it's a rerun of the 1993 campaign against George Allen. It's a rerun of the 1997 campaign against Jim Gilmore, and it's a rerun of the campaign, obviously, against Creed Deeds. So the Creed Deeds employed in 2009, it's a campaign essentially based on I can't provide you a reason to vote for me, so I'm going to try and just demonize you. Virginia voters tend to, see much beyond that, but it's very similar in a sense of the constant attack on, social issues, the constant attack on this made-up attack that, they call it the war on women. I mean, Ken has 5 daughters. So these attacks are kind of baseless, but, they actually motivate, unfortunately, a sector of the electorate, and our job is to communicate a completely different and Ken's story that thus far has mitigated a lot of these attacks. But again, it's really based on this premise that, and a false one at that Republicans, can't see beyond, if you will, a certain vision, and it's a very misguided, very judgmental, actually, attack where they love to employ this that Republicans don't treat everyone a certain particular way when in reality it's the Democrats, it's the hyper partisan Democrats, especially ones like Terry McAuliffe, who actually employ this particular strategy, and we're seeing it unfold with Terry McAuliffe.
On the other hand, though, you would have to agree that that campaign strategy in Virginia at certain times has been highly successful, hasn't it?
You know what? It's been successful in 2008, and it was successful in 2012. More so in 2012 than 8. It was a little bit of that, plus just the whole change concept was
right.
Was what really carried it. But it was very successful in 2012. But comparing the 2012 electorate with the 2013 electorate is literally apples and oranges. In 2008, the turnout was approximately 73%. In 2009, the turnout for the gubernatorial election was 39.8%. Mm-hmm. In 2012, the electorate turnout was somewhere between, I think, 73 and 74%. And the question is, what is it going to be this time? So the Democrats have a harder time maximizing their base.
Right.
And one of the ways that they like to motivate their base is to demonize the other guy. It's not like they're trying to provide voters a reason to vote for them. Mm-hmm. Their entire strategy is vote against the other guy.
Right. The other guy, it's the other guy's worse. It's like, I'm bad, but the other guy's worse strategy, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's the way they're treating this campaign. That's the way they've set the table, if you will, or they'd like to set the table. But the difference between the turnouts is key.
Right.
Between the presidential and the gubernatorial years. This isn't even an off year in politics. This is an off year.
Right, exactly.
So
it's gonna. No, I don't think there's any question it's going to be tough. I mean, if you're a student of political Virginia history, certainly it's an uphill climb right now for the McAuliffe campaign, without a doubt. Chris, clear up this Marine Corps Reserves flap with your candidate that's gone on for about a week. Some people saying, well, the paper's done. We're not quite accurate. He didn't really serve. He didn't complete his stuff. I mean, what's the deal with this?
John, I appreciate it. As a former Marine myself, this is an issue that obviously is near and dear to my heart, and one that obviously with Ken as well. Ken served in what is called PLC law. So that's it was a 10-week training program in the Marine Corps where, you go through training. Ken was actually commissioned a second lieutenant. So he was commissioned as second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps, pinned the bars on, and right after they do that, you get inactivated. Because in the Marine Corps, as most people do not know, the amount of officers and the amount of actual Marines on active duty is regulated by law, by an act of Congress. So you just can't, take every newly commissioned second lieutenant and throw them into the basic school and put them on active duty, because you have to wait for a slot to open. And so basically, after he finished his was commissioned, he goes into this holding pattern.
Right.
Well, and they have PLC law, they have PLC, they have candidates on air, ground, and law, three different three different divisions, if you will. So Ken is waiting for his spot to open up to go to the basic school, and his wife becomes pregnant.
Right.
And he says, okay, to his recruiter, I need to know how long it's going to be before I get put into the basic school. And they're like, well, we really can't tell you. Ken takes the bar in Georgia, which is the quickest bar one can take right after graduating law school, hopefully to use that to speed the process of them, bringing them in and putting them on active duty, and it apparently had no impact on the timing. And, the Marine Corps just says, look, you got to wait. We don't know how long it can be. And so Ken, in another conversation with his recruiter, and keep in mind, he can't get a job, even though he's not on active duty with the Marine Corps, because he's under contract with the Marine Corps.
Right.
No one's going to hire him because he's under contract. So he's literally faced with a decision. What do you do?
Right.
And so they said, well, look, you can resign your commission is what you can do if you can't wait. And they don't. And he said, well, how long do I have to wait? Well, really don't know. And so Ken says, well, can you transfer me to ground? And they're like, no, request denied. So basically, that he resigned his commission at that point. I think there were like 4 or 5 guys that year. Now, his recruiter, the OCO, the Officer Selection Officer, basically told him, the reason why you're in this holding pattern is there are too many people. There are too many people in the system, and we don't know how long it's going to take. And it was because of that. Mm-hmm. Ken, was faced with that decision. I know it was a decision that he didn't like to have to make, but it was a decision he had to make. So I was a bit perplexed by that story because the story basically said that, but they did their best, I felt, to try and put things in a negative light. But then again, that's what the media generally does.
Okay, well, this is the bottom line. It seemed like he went through what he had to go through. He's got a family coming. His wife is pregnant. He's got to figure out what he's going to do. He's got to earn an income. Yeah. They couldn't give him his answer, so he moved on. Certainly something that anybody would do.
Ken doesn't talk about it. I mean, it's not like Ken puts this on his resume as part of his story and says, I served the United States Marine Corps. He doesn't. He's never done that. He just doesn't feel that is something that So it was much to do about nothing, but.
Yeah, I get you. Hey, we're out of time, Chris. I got to take off.